"I think, father, you may safely trust my wife's spiritual interest to me," Ernest said with warmth. "You do not understand her. I do. Because there is nothing morbid about her, because she has a sweet, cheerful confidence in Christ, you doubt and misjudge her. You may depend upon it that people are individual in their piety, as in other things, and cannot all be run in one mould. Katy has a playful way of speaking, I know, and often expresses her strongest feelings with what seems like levity, and is, perhaps, a little reckless about being misunderstood in consequence." He smiled on me as he thus took up the cudgels in my defence, and I never felt so grateful to him in my life. The truth is, I hate sentimentalism so cordially, and have besides such an instinct to conceal my deepest, most sacred emotions, that I do not wonder people misunderstand and misjudge me. "I did not refer to her playfulness," father returned. "Old people must make allowances for the young. They must make allowances. What pains me is that this child, full of life and gaiety as she is, sees death approach without that becoming awe and terror which befits mortal man." Ernest was going to reply, but I broke in eagerly upon his answer. "It is true that I expressed no anxiety when I believed death to be at hand. I felt none. I had given myself away to Christ, and he had received me, and why should I be afraid to take his hand and go where he led me? And it is true that I asked for no counsel. I was too weak to ask questions, or to like to have questions asked. But my mind was bright and wide awake while my body was so feeble, and I took counsel of God. Oh, let me read to you 2 passages from the life of Caroline Fry, which will make you understand how a poor sinner looks upon death. The first is an extract from a letter written after learning that her days on earth were numbered. "As many will hear and will not understand why I want no time of preparation, often desired by far holier ones than I. I tell you why, and shall tell others, and so shall you. It is not because I am so holy, but because I am so sinful. The peculiar character of my religious experience has always been a deep and agonizing sense of sin, the sin of yesterday, of today, confessed with anguish hard to be endured, and cried for pardon that could not be unheard. Each day cleansed anew in Jesus' blood, and each day more and more hateful in my own sight. What can I do in death I have not done in life? What do in this week, when I am told I cannot live, other than I did last week, when I knew it not? Alas, there is but one thing undone, to serve him better, and the death-bed is no place for that. Therefore, I say, if I am not ready now, I shall not be by delay, so far as I have to do with it. If he has more to do in me, that is his part. I need not ask him not to spoil his work by too much haste." And these were her dying words a few days later. "This is my bridal day, the beginning of my life. I wish there should be no mistake about the reason of my desire to depart and to be with Christ. I confess myself the vilest, chiefest of sinners, and I desire to go to him, that I may be rid of the burden of sin, the sin of my nature, not the past, repented of every day, but the present, hourly, momentary sin, which I do commit, or may commit, the sense of which at times drives me half mad with grief." I shall never forget the expression of father's face as I finished reading these remarkable words. He rose slowly from his seat, and came and kissed me on the forehead. Then he left the room, but returned with a large volume, and pointing to a blank page, requested me to copy them there. He complains that I do not write legibly, so I printed them as plainly as I could with my pen. June 20th. On the 1st of May there came to us, with other spring flowers, our little fair-haired, blue-eyed daughter. How rich I felt when I heard Ernest's voice, as he replied to a question asked at the door, proclaim, "Mother and children all well." To think that we, who thought ourselves rich before, are made so much richer now. But she is not large and vigorous, as little Ernest was, and we cannot rejoice in her without some misgivings. Yet her very frailty makes her precious to us. Little Ernest hangs over her with an almost lover-like pride and devotion, and should she live I can imagine what a protector he will be for her. I have had to give up the care of him to Martha. During my illness I do not know what would have become of him but for her. One of the pleasant events of every day at this time was her bringing him to me in such exquisite order, his face shining with health and happiness, his hair and dress so beautifully neat and clean. Now that she has the care of him, she has become very fond of him, and he certainly forms one bond of union between us, for we both agree that he is the handsomest, best, most remarkable child that ever lived or ever will live. July 6th. I have come home to dear mother with both my children. Ernest says our only hope for baby is to keep her out of the city during the summer months. What a petite wee maiden she is! Where does all the love come from? If I had had her always, I do not see how I could be more fond of her. And do people call it living who never had any children? July 10th. If this darling baby lives, I shall always believe it is owing to my mother's prayers. I find little Ernest has a passionate temper and a good deal of self-will, but he has fine qualities. I wish he had a better mother. I am so impatient with him when he is wayward and perverse. What he needs is a firm, gentle hand, moved by no caprice, and controlled by the constant fear of God. He never ought to hear an irritable word or sharp tones, but he does hear them, I must own, with grief and shame. The truth is, it is so long since I really felt strong and well that I am not myself, and cannot do him justice, poor child. Next to being a perfect wife, I want to be a perfect mother. How mortifying, how dreadful in all things to come short of even one's own standard. What approach, then, does one make to God's standard? Mother seems very happy to have us here, though we make so much trouble. She encourages me in all my attempts to control myself and to control our dear little boy, and the chapters she gives me out of her own experience are as interesting as a novel, and a good deal more instructive. August. Dear Ernest has come to spend a week with us. He is all tired out, as there has been quite a deal of sickness in the city, and father has had quite a serious attack. He brought with him a nurse for baby, as one more desperate effort to strengthen her constitution. I reproached him for doing it without consulting me, but he said mother had written to tell him that I was all worn out, and not in a state to have the care of the children. It has been a terrible blow to me. One by one I am giving up the sweetest maternal duties. God means that I shall be nothing, and do nothing, a mere useless sufferer. When I tell Ernest so, he says I am everything to him, and that God's children please him just as well when they sit patiently with folded hands, if that is his will, as when they are hard at work. But to be at work, to be useful, to be necessary to my husband and children, is just what I want, and I do find it hard to be set against the wall, as it were, like an old piece of furniture no longer of any service. I see now that my first desire has not been to please God, but to please myself, for I am restless under his restraining hand, and find my prison a very narrow one. I would be willing to bear any other trial, if I could only have health and strength for my beloved ones. I pray for patience with bitter tears. End of chapter 15.